Alright, welcome back to another video. Yes, I switched browser. Opera GX is kind of amazing. It helps me run Roblox in like um less in like a 300 ping instead of the usual 500 to 1000 ping, which is cool. Right. So it's been a while. Yeah, because there's just so much changes that's coming to Blox Card. I happy that changes are coming, but I'm happy that changes are coming, but not all of them are really favorable, and some of them just make some cards are just too good now. And so we're back to the tier list. I have tried to find the perfect time to continue this tier list because there's a lot of card changes to these epic cards. So some notable cards that I have put back down from the tier list back to here. We already go through these, but I'm go back through them because they haven't changed them. So Banhammer, Banhammer. It's now a 5 white that obliterate a fire. So if you're a newer player and you don't know what obliterate means, it doesn't trigger undeath effects. That's all. That just remove a fire from field. There's almost no resistance to it, but it's just a target obliteration. So target immunity will be immune to this. But it's a 5 white that obliterates something. That's pretty decent now. So it went from a I remember B or C card to I think a low A tier card. It's pretty solid now. The fact it costs only 5 white now really helps it. So we have that. Next is Gray Goose scenario. So it used to be that you need to like control some Morphic Goose card, but now you only need 2 of them in your base plate. And that's great. You only I used to do, like I run decks with just like 4 or 5 Goose for like no reason at all, just to use this card as an AoE dust. But that doesn't mean it's super great of a plan. So I would just still put it in low B. It's probably better than this guy, probably better than that. Remember, Goose are very RNG dependent like decks, so you're not gonna get too much of it. But yeah, we have that. I'm gonna left this guy for a while because yeah, he's been changed twice. Lunar Banishment, I forgot about the nerf it gets. It's no longer prevented from like everything. No, it had to take the guy summoned must take damage in order for the anti-legendary, anti-epic cast mechanics to work. So now it went from a pretty viable card to a low OK card. To a I would say it's still a really good like Paracellin support card, but I wouldn't say it's the best, so I'm gonna put it there. Michael P, it loses its consistent 8 OTK potential with Lesus, but now costs nothing, so I don't think there should be a change of place for this guy. He's still a tier card. Yep, he's still an A tier card. Okay, next, we are rushing through these. We have Mo Dungeon. Mo Dungeon, pretty sure is fixed now, which make it an amazing card in clock deck. Clock decks are just decks that try to break your opponents by making them, can't play things that they have. Not by nightmare, but by cards that they can't play. And it's a bad game plan, sure, but it's an okay card now. Low okay. Okay. Next we have Mind Picks. Because of the meta right now, Mind Picks ain't great anymore. It's still a decent enough card, but yeah, I just forgot to put it there. It went from S tier to like below Dicey Dave, but don't worry, it's still pretty good. Next is Nevermoor. Nevermoor has seen some changes, and I think it's okay now. Okay, it's not the greatest card in the world, but it is actually a very frequently used win con control red, so that's why I'm gonna put it above Taskmaster. Next, we have Rachel Duff. Rachel Duff is now a huge ass fighter. She's now a 700 health, 400 power fighter, which is pretty amazing. But then again, she's still pretty slow, no resistance and shit. But she's good now. Don't get me wrong, she is actually an okay card now. So I put her in, well, high viable. Yeah, I would argue. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she's a bit weaker. No, she's a bit stronger than Kana. Yeah, this is how I put her. Okay, next we have Scripter. Scripter is one of the cards that received a big change. So now he's still an 8 white. He's still a white fighter. He's still at 100 HP and 100 power. Or maybe he hasn't. So now during your step, you give yourself a red, green, blue, and yellow action and destroy those cards if they're not cast by your next end step. Basically, you can base play one of these 4 cards and use them. Use the rest somehow. He's still pretty bad. He's still pretty slow for what it is, but he's a lot better now. So I'm gonna put him a low okay. Next, has a hero. Right. So just like 1 week ago, this card would be instantly S tier. 1 week ago, this card is S tier. Seriously, it's a 2 white, 4 green, 800 HP, 600 power haste with the exact same ability. It would be S tier. Now, as a 3 white, 4 green, 600 power, 600 HP, same ability with haste, it's a lot weaker now. But it's still a lot better than what it used to be. And the fact that he's like the last haste that green has, that give him some favor point. But I wouldn't give him too much of a high placement. I'd give him I put him good cards, so that's really okay. See better on all the limbs. Yeah, he's decent now. I think he's in a good spot. I think like a 100 HP buff could be great, but I don't know. Like, see, the only haste left in green is the only automatic haste left in green is has a hero. This thing's token doesn't count. Next. Alright, so now we can start with a tier list. Continue with like the old tier list. Let me just go test some water real quick. Right, so the Catorium. He used to be S tier, like literally overpowered as AF. Now it's balanced. Like he's still very good. 8 white, 1 green, 5/5. When this card is cast, all color fighter lose 300 health and power. The word and power there really makes him a lot better. So I'ma put him in. I'ma proudly put him among the godly wipes of this game. In good card, high A tier. Next, we have Peacebreaker. We have Breaker. The Peacebreaker is a 2 yellow, 50 HP, 50 power, haste. Whenever this attacks and destroys another, your opponent loses 1,200 life. Destroy this card. So, one good deck for this is a toy deck. Toy decks sometimes run into a situation there your opponent have like above 1,000 HP left. And you need something to finish it off, but then your opponent starts like spam like 100, like a bunch of high health fighters, and you can't do shit about it. Peacebreaker is like a good finishing tool because 1,200 burn is honestly a pretty decent amount, and the requirement seems hard, but really not that hard to reach. And you can even buff this thing. Yes, sometimes you want to do it. And with that being said, I think it's a pretty viable card. It's not like the most viable thing in the world, but it's just mid tier. Yeah, mid tier. Next, we have the Prophet. The Prophet. The Prophet. The Prophet is a 2 white, 3 red, 1 blue, 1 yellow, 1,100 HP, 100 power gladiators. So all of the gladiator rules applies here. When you cast him, he draws you a card, ready all ally fighters, and they generate, and search your deck for gladiator. So what Myrmidon, whatever, and a lot of people say that why this guy is certified to being a glad is that he technically makes like they said that you basically take an extra turn, which if you think about it, it's actually true because everything generates, and then you draw a card because at the start of your turn you draw a card, and everything's ready instead of unlock, because ready is like what happened at the end of your turn, and unlock just like loses all locks. So that makes sense. But the base plate doesn't generate, and you doesn't get 2 whites. That would have been a great way to buff this guy. If like add in, like, I know the text will be pretty long if you add it in, but make him like, when you do, when this card's cast, when you do, draw a card, ready all ally fighters, and they generate all fighters, all cards in your base plate generate. That's all. And then just like add like that much words in. I know it's a bit long, but this guy text is already long as fuck, so that wouldn't change much about the guy anyway. Being said, he's a pretty mediocre class. He's not the best. His stats pretty trash, and an early unlock usually isn't as good as a late game unlock, which, yeah. So I probably put him in above yeah, above defaultio. Also, lead wizard, he will now only give red and blue action instead of array cards, which instantly makes him this high. Actually, let me put him there. Yeah, he's pretty good. I just played with him today, and then I didn't see that. The Skull Collector. This guy is pretty cool. Collector. The Skull Collector is a 4 yellow, 800 HP, 300 power, which is actually a pretty decent stat for a yellow card. Yellow usually have a bit of a weaker stats because they're so cheap, but this is one card that have a pretty decent stat line. And when an enemy fighter dies, give yourself a skull card. So skull card are these pretty cool Skull Collector. No, fuck, Skull Collector. No, I don't want skull. The skull. Wow, I have to write the. So the skull are like these: one white and one color X, one X color of like stats. The rest skulls are pretty decent beat stick, the 200 health, 400 power. This thing just give you a bunch of life, which is pretty good. This thing. So it said give yourself a blue or red action card, but in order to activate the ability, you actually have to target something. So that could like fuck you up sometime, but most of the time will help you. And this is a target fighter generate twice, pretty good. So this guy actually a very high value card for what he is. He is an epic card. If he was a common card, I swear to God he would be a lot better. But because he's a pretty it's a pretty hard card to actually like maul into because he's only epic, and the fact that you have to run like a pretty specific that you want to help him, you want to use him very properly, but the fact that he's also provides a lot of value for what he is really do make him a pretty decent card, and I think he's viable. I think he's among one of the more viable cards in this game, so that's why I'm gonna put him here. Yeah, this is a good place for him. Let's continue. Thunderbolt. So for like the last almost few months, okay. For like the last like 3 days, I finally know the potential of Thunderbolt. For like the rest of the time, I think this card is just shit. When it's get reworked into like this ability right here, I think it's just crap. But now, after I play with it for like 3 days, I finally found a potential in it. It's a 4 white, so that's why it manipulate the. It's 4 white only, so it's manipulate the mulligan system. Do you know what the mulligan system is? Is that cards that only cost white and cost only white stud usually have a higher chance to appear in the starting hand of your starting hand. So cards that only cost white, that is under like 6 or under 4, like under 4 maybe. So they usually have a higher chance of appearing in your starting hand. So that's being said, if like blue is a pretty slow color and they can afford to take like the first 3 turns of them doing nothing, they not even discarding. What the hell? War 8 8 8 8 8 8 8 8 8. What the hell? That's so much 8. So they can afford to take a few turns doing nothing. So the fact that Thunderbolt literally give you a free out of jail a get out of jail free card against extremely aggressive decks like bees um, crowns flavored decks and stuff like Red Cliffs or something. Those like are extremely aggressive, and Doge too. Those like are extremely aggressive, and they want to like take over the board at like turn 3, and that's when you cast Thunderbolt. Now because it's Obliterate, it literally immune like it bypasses, because this is an AOE Obliteration. It bypasses all passive effects that all immunities, and it doesn't trigger Undeath's effect, which some archetypes have. Ideally, stuff like Enforcer, Red Cliff Enforcer, which doesn't really matter anyways. But yeah, Thunderbolt is actually a really decent card. If you get it in the late game, isn't that bad. Just discard it. Like, and even if you're in desperate situation, you can just use it, because remember this: it obliterates all cards in your base plate, so that the icons, like for example, if you have 7 cards in your base plate and 7 icons, you play Thunderbolt. That 7 base plate card may be lost, but you still have 7 icons left, 7 blue icons left to play. So with that 7 blue icon, as long as you establish the board and like regain like the amount of icons you lost, it wouldn't really make a huge difference. I would make a huge difference, but like you could like slowly crawl back into the game after wiping everything out, just 4 white. So that being said, I think it's also pretty decent. It's still a pretty decent with Shovelware, aka Cash Grab, which give it some points. So that's why I'm putting it in like the low tier. It's a situational card, but when it works, it really is like no cards will ever be like it. Also, yeah, after you do plates on turn 3, remember to discard some blue cards to actually get some effects from it. Also, like a really main engine of like no base plate blue decks, which cool. Those decks are pretty decent. Not the best, but they're fun. Alright, next Tinfoil Bot. 5 white, 1500 HP, 50 power. When it's cat, deals 700 damage to all colorless fighter. This card is not that great. Let's be honest here. It's a 5 white that provides literally no stat on field, 50 power is literally nothing. It's a good Gigan card, sure. Gigan card, but that's out everything. It's a very good counter to Empress though, I give it that. And sometimes running this against a colorless deck is pretty funny, but most of the time you really don't want to run it. And the fact that it do needs a buff, but there's like really no way to buff it as long as, but there's a way to buff it. It's bad, and it's usable, but it's also Gen White, which really make it somewhat better than some of these cards. So I guess I'm gonna put it here. It's pretty bad, but it can work sometimes. Okay, next we have Pixel Totem. Pixel Totem something. Totem of Pixel is an 8 color stud card, 1250 power, 250 attack, 1250 health, 250 attack, can't counter attack. During your end step, all ally fighter gains 5th of their health and power. Let's be honest, this card is just bad. It's slow and it's like extremely slow AoE buff. It's funny sometimes to like do some like get a fighter to like 1,000,000 health and power, but that's like the best you could do out of it. So yeah, it was pretty funny, but it's pretty bad. Just I wouldn't recommend using it, so I'm gonna just put it here. It's extremely bad. Next, Toy Boss Dino. Toy Boss Dino is a 6 yellow, 600 health, 2000 power that can't counter, and when it's cast, if you control 3 other toys, unlock this card. This card is pretty amazing in what it is, aka toy decks. This is like a really extremely high end for toys. If your opponent thinks they're safe, and after like board wiping your toys, and then they think they're safe, they're wrong. This 2000 power instantly to face always threaten them, like for the rest of the game. This card ends so many games for me and ended so many of my games. And so I think it's a pretty decent card for what it is. It's one of the rare archetype cards that is actually really decent. Like it's actually admittedly one of the more amazing archetype cards. And that, with that being said, I'm gladly putting it in viable. Toys is viable. Yeah, it is there. Okay, next we have UAE. UAE is a 2 white, 8 red, 1800 HP, 800 power, effect can't destroy this card, red fighter, epic red fighter, costs only if you have 4 or more cards in your hand during your end step, destroy all cards in each player's hand and all ally fighters. So what do you do with this card? Well, you play normally for the first few turns, somehow get 8 reds, and then like when you have like a pretty decent amount of icons, just try to ramp. You can ramp in red. You can, trust me. So when that happens, you discard your entire hand except for this card. You discard your entire hand except for one card and Marissa Kitty. What this will do is that you discard your entire hand, you play Marissa Kitty, and then you play UAE. Because Marissa Kitty will give you 3 red crystal into your hand, plus 1 card that you keep in your hand. This will literally negate the effect of UAE, which is a quote-unquote downside. And then as long as your opponent doesn't have a board, you basically win the game. Well, unless they have some set to 0 power cards, and yeah, you could probably gonna lose. But these are pretty decent cards. These are one trick pony. If your opponent can answer him, they win. If they can't, then you win. So I think it's pretty viable. It's not like a good card by any means. He's here. He's pretty decent. Next, we have Ultimate Dorographon. Ultimate Dorographon is a 2 white, 2 green, 2 yellow, 1200 HP, 400 power, is a gladiator, and his ability is whenever a fighter targets this card, summon a clone of that fighter, and you gain 200 life, search your deck for a gladiator. So this deck is quite honestly pretty amazing. It's have extremely insane stats what it is, plus it even have an ability that could result in extremely funny situation of 7 reverse backwards. And that's all I need to say. It's a pretty good glad in a pretty mediocre. Yeah, the fact it's in a pretty mediocre dual color really do hold it back. Which the reason why I'm put this below the Gosh Dairy. Next, we have Ultra Obliteration. Ultra Obliteration is a free card that casts only you have 80 or more cards in your deck and you win the game. Ban your opponent is you win the game. Let's just be real here, it's a pretty bad card, don't use it. Just don't. It's even worse than Satyr. Like, this will break Ultra decks, and like if you have 80 or more cards in your hand, you already win the 80 or more cards in your deck, and as long as you have a hand, you're gonna win in the game anyway. There's no point of trying to sacrifice a deck slot in your deck for like a thing that make you win your game quicker. That's not great. That's just not a hugely whatever. Next is Ultra. Ultra is a pretty decent card. It's a 4 blue, 1250 power, 1250 health, 50 power, and during your end step, if you have less than 5000 life, you get 1000 life and draw you a card. So this is basically a comeback blue card, in the sense that when you at like 500 HP after getting like wrecked by aggro and someone stabilize your board, you play Ultra, and looks at your opponent's cries, and because of their efforts is gone. He'll draw you cards and you gain you 1000 life, and as long as your opponent can't answer him, which is pretty hard, he have a pretty decent amount of HP unless he swaps his stats. Yeah, you will slowly gain back 5000 life, and your opponent's gonna sit there and cry. Which make Ultra a pretty decent card in dire situation. That's why I will gladly put him in A tier. Next, we have Uncreation. Uncreation just received a pretty is it Uncreation? Uncreation just received a pretty decent buff. It's now a still a 5 green, 1 blue, 1200 HP, 300 power, effect contract for substance card thing. But now, whenever a Nightmare action is carried, note that Nightmare action is actually buffed now. Night Fright actually burn whoever played and it costs 1 white, and Nightmare now costs 3. So that's a pretty decent thing. If your opponent has 5 cards in there, has 5 cards in hand or more, they forget to put that in. This card gains 250 health and power. I still don't recommend using this in, nightmares. Still, that's pretty unnecessary for what it is, but it's pretty decent now. So I guess that's what it has going for it. It's still only like okay on how good it is, but it's a pretty decent okay. So I'm gonna put it there. Actually put it. Yeah. Oh my god! Wow. Yeah. This is where it stopped. Now we went from uncreation to uncreative name 1, 2, 3. Now this is a true nightmare card. 1 green, 5 yellow, 5 blue, 1,300 HP, 300 power. Whenever an action, not just nightmare, an action is cast, if your opponent has 5 cards in hand, shuffle a rare nightmare into your deck. Each player draws a card. I would argue that when it was uncommon nightmares would be better, but rare nightmare works just as good. So yeah. So what do you think about this card? Well, nightmare clogs your opponent's hand, and this thing literally like try to destroy all cards remaining in your opponent's hand. On top of having an okay-ish survival stat for cards of its type, aka mill cards. Plus, it even like prevent you from dying from its own ability, which is cool. So that being said, nightmare is pretty bad. Not gonna lie, nightmare is still pretty shit. But because it's a good nightmare card, it got extra point for being what it is, but still not by a lot. That's why I'm gonna put it there. There. The fact that it's a nightmare card really brings it down. Next we have what I call Vertus array. Vertus array. Vertus array is a 7 green, 200 health and power. When it's first cast, summon a clone of a last dead enemy fighter. This card used to be pretty insane, not gonna lie. It used to be an 8 green, summon a dead enemy fighter and an ally fighter on cast, and now it's and then it gets changed into a summon 2 and dead enemy fighter on cast, and now it's a 7 green, summon 1. How do I say about this card? Well, you never use this card for stat, that's obvious. It's a pretty situational card, and like design wise, I don't think people would really like. Bandit's Warehouse is like a lot more reliable. Bandit's is an 8 green, sure, but it's a lot more reliable, and it also synergizes with the new split mechanics, while VTX Array really doesn't do that really well. And that being said, I think VTX Array is like just enough. Like he's just viable. He's not really that great of a card. He's pretty mediocre, but he's also have his uses, so I'm gonna put him right there in the viable spot. Next we have an actual good card. Vitus Games. 3 white, 5 blue, 700 HP, 300 power. Pretty horrible stats, but attacks. When this card dies, draw 3 cards. Extremely solid ability for what it is. It's amazing. This card used to be OP as fuck because it was an on cast with 500 power. It used to have 500 power, and it's an on cast. Now it's an on def and have 300 power. Pretty big nerf, sure, but it's also really still good. Draw 3 cards, never been bad. Yes, there is a way to counter it by obliteration or base plating, but that is still it's still good, but it's not S tier good. It's just good. I glad he put it here. Vitus Array, pretty decent card. Next we have Visleaf. Visleaf is also a pretty high tier card. Yeah, he has so much ults. So he's a pretty high value card. He's a 2 white, 1 green, 1 yellow, 500 HP, 600 power, and when it's first cast, he decrease the power of all fighters by 200. It's pretty decent. Now, technically he himself is a 500 HP, 400 power, but the fact that you AoE debuff everything with 200 power plus, it's like just a cheap like such a cheap FU. It really makes one of the original scripter of this game, obviously, a really solid card for what it is, and that's why I'm gladly put it in A tier above this thing. It's a lot better. This thing's a lot slower, but it has some more value, I guess. Next, we have Vitality Potion. Vitality Potion is a epic card that is kind of underused, but I can see why. Vitality Potion. What the hell? Get out of here! Nobody likes you. Epic. Aha, got it. Okay, so it's a 4 white. That's a target fighter gain 1,000 health. If this card was a white card, it would be A tier. But because a blue card, it's not. Because when you discard it, you can run this in any decks. But when you discard it, it wouldn't really help you. And because if it's a white, it would really change that a lot and make it a lot better. But because it isn't, it's struggle to really performs well. So that's why I will put it in a viable. It's less viable than, yeah, it's more viable than him, but it's okay. It's a card that exists, and health buff really isn't like the strongest thing in the world. But it's serves its purpose. Just don't overuse it. Don't think that, wow, 1,000 power, 1,000 health isn't too much. Being honest here, 1,000 health is okay, but it's not like the most amount in the world. And I think my dog's gone crazy. Okay, so next we have Waddle Tom. Waddle Tom is a 5 green, 1,000 HP, 250 power. When it starts cast, a target fighter gains 500 health. This card has seen like a lot less play than it used to be. Back in the days, it was very it was overused as fuck. But like slowly and surely, just fall out of grace. It doesn't get nerfed. Well, maybe it does, but I don't know. But then again, what do you expect? It's a pretty classic card for what it is, and by itself is okay. That's just how you describe it. It's a pretty mediocre card, health buff cards. Like I said, 500 health buff really isn't too much. It can help you. It can help you a lot sometimes. It can turn the tide of the board sometimes. And on top of that, you get a pretty decent fire, but it's still not the best thing in the world. So that's why I put them in viable. You can use them, just don't overuse them. Next, we have Whitley's. This card is just bad. Okay, it's a 9 yellow, 900 health in 900 HP and 900 health and power. When an effect gives you your first card each turn, both players draw 3 cards. If you're playing Mill, your end game is Jesus. Your end game is this amazing guy that draw 5 cards for your opponent. Your endgame is an amazing guy that draw 5 cards for your opponents, and your turn that provides literally an OTK stat card, and it's only costing 5 yellow. 5. That's the important part. He only costs 5. Anything above than that, mill decks really not gonna like those. And Whitley is the exact opposite of what you want from mill deck, because it on itself is a pretty mill-ish card. Plus, it doesn't have like static cost ratio is actually pretty bad on this card. Plus, you have to like the effect is a give, not a draw, which is pretty decent. Like for a mill deck, it's actually pretty hard to crack that ability. And even when you do so, he will only trigger once, and it's not really that great of an ability. And it's not yellow. He's pretty bad. He kind of desperately needs. He not desperately needs a buff, but he do needs one. And that's why I would gladly put him here. Only one thing is like, is Jack-Cat? Yeah, is Jack-Cat still bad? Sad guy. Okay, next we have Witch True Brew. This card really doesn't see much play because it's honestly a bit slow. it should be a 3 green, or maybe it should give 600 health, then it will be good. But at this point, it really isn't like a great card. It's not a bad card. It's definitely not here, but it's really do warrant for buffs. So that's why I can put it in okay. Or maybe people just don't want to buff it. I don't know. Next, we have the Wood Reviewer. Now this is a good card. Wood Reviewer seems like a really high value card. A really like high risk, high reward card. But then you realize that most of the time he just gonna dies before he gonna kill you. So in fact, and the fact that he's a 6/6 that grows home, he grow health, really do make him a lot better. And the fact he's pretty cheap, what it is, he's pretty decent, all things considered. That said, though, he's still a pretty high risk card, and I wouldn't warrant you using him 100% of the time. In life loss deck, he's an okay card. In life loss deck, I wouldn't really recommend using him. But in high life loss deck, he's a pretty decent card. That being said, though, I think he's a pretty good card. I won't like deny that, and I gotta put him above a lot of these cards. I guess. Yeah, I gotta put him here. He's actually, yeah, he's pretty decent. He's pretty good. Okay, next we have Wool Perch. Wool Perch, on the other hand, is the almost ultimate board wipe this game. It's used in every green RG control deck because it only costs RG. Basically, it's obliterate everything except for 2 white stud in each player base plate, which is pretty amazing what it is. Like, yes, you can lose, and yes, this is literally the most last resort thing in the fucking world. But when you do, it just works. It works, but I wouldn't say it's like an amazing card. It's not Lobster and Lobster MCH level of good, because it also affect you a lot more than it should. But because it's still like a hard ass wipe and it's somewhat cancerous, I would put them up under Mass Epidemic. Next we have Xiao. Xiao is just useless. Let's be honest, he really warrants for a buff. He's a 4 white, 3 yellow, 5/5, basically a 650. You count in his ability. If he works for both epic and legendary, then he will be pretty decent. Even then, it still wouldn't see much play. Mostly due to the fact he's an epic card himself, which makes him really hard to actually mull into. And, well, yeah, he's still pretty hard to use. He's in an archetype that's not that popular. He's really do needs a buff. Would argue he's here. He's one of the more powerful needs buff cards. Yeah, he's here. Okay, next we have a card, one of my favorite card. What is this called? Wonder. XX Wonders XX. 3 white, 4 green, 1,500 HP, 1 turn attacks, deal 250 damage to all enemy fighters. One thing to note, that if the effect damage gonna kill whatever, like if there's a 250 health guy in the field, you want Wonders to attack him, because then Wonders will not take counter attack damage, which is pretty nice, not gonna lie. And the fact he costs less white than he costs green, because green is actually really easy to generate. He really do make him a really high value card. If you get Wonders on like turn 2 or 3, there's so much tempo potential. There's honestly, like, you're probably gonna win the game. But if you get him later in the game, he's a lot less powerful, so that's one of his big drawbacks. But then again, he's a pretty, like, if not, then you just discard the guy. We all know that. That being said, I would put him in A tier. Pretty viable. Next is Joshi Man. This is just a confusing card. It's good, but it can be better. It has been nerfed a lot because of its somewhat degenerated potential that it used to be. But now I think it is time to make it a lot better. Let's make it only deal 50 damage to yourself and cost 1 less white, and have like 800 HP or something. How about that? Actually, yeah, how about that? That would be cool. It's like a lot of AoE locks potential with it already lost. Actually, just make it cost one less white. Don't change anything else about it. Just make it cost one less white. It's fine, sure, but I will would like to see it has the bulb. It's an okay card, and it's one of the more fine okay cards to be honest. So I'm gonna put it here. I would really want to get for buff though. He would be pretty amazing if he get one. I really want to see looks him good. I want to see him good. Be a good card. A lot of like degenerated OTK. I mean like AOE stocks potential, AOE locks potential with the guy have been lost. So I think it's okay to bring him back to where he used to be. But your choice. Next is Zecharius. Oh, he's on screen. Who cares? Where is it? Zecharius. Zecharius. So 4 white, 4 yellow, 800 HP and 800 power. Pretty decent stats. For what it is actually good stats. It have higher stat in UNC Uncorrupted, which literally just tells you how useless the card is, how useless that card is. And when this card dies, it shuffle a copy of it into your deck and you draw a card. Yeah, he's a really solid card. He's not quite S tier, but he's just really solid in any yellow decks that you want to run, like a high end fighter for your decks. And he's by no means like slow. He's actually pretty decent quick for what yellows are. And that being said, I would put him on high A tier. Next, speaking of good cards, wow, the next few yellow cards are just really good, aren't they? It's Yuki. As a card overall, because Yuki is a Glad, she's probably a B plus to low A tier. But because she's a Glad, I have to rate her as a Glad. And as a Glad, arguably, she's the best one. 2 white, 3 yellow, 400 HP, 500 power, blah blah blah. Glad requirements. Whenever you cast a yellow fighter, you have no yellow stud left. Unlock it, it gains 400 power, and search your deck for Gladiator. You play her, and you play just like a bunch of colorless card that cost a bunch of colorless costing yellow fighters, and you just OTK your opponent. That's how it is. Or just wipe your entire. This gives you so much potential for tempo and for board swing and just OTKs. And it's also in the color where Gladiators is the most suitable, because yellow have such a really decent and a strong board, a strong collection of epic and legendary cards that it just boosts Yuki up to another level of goodness. That's why this may make me a bit controversial. As a Glad, she is around here. But because I'm rating her as a Gladiator, Yuki is an S tier card. Next, we have Zek Attack. Not to be confused with Zek Attack 83. Okay. With Zek Attack 83. It's a 7 white, 3 red, 1000 HP, 500 power. When it starts cast, it deals 1000 damage to a target fighter and you lose 1000 life. A pretty decent card in high life loss, but high life loss isn't that great, so you have to count it. Also put you in lobster threshold, which is pretty cool because 1000 life loss usually do that to you. And it's a 1000 bread that provides a pretty decent fighters left on board after what happens. Yeah, this is very expensive what it is, but he is a good card. I think he's viable, but he's not really the most viable thing in the world. So that's why I'm put him lower than Nevermoor. Next we have Zek Quilly. Zek Quilly is a 5 white, 3 yellow, 900 HP, 550 power. Okay stats, not the best in the world. And when it starts cast, if your opponent control at least 2 fire, they lose all of their color stats and draw 2 cards. This is both a good mill cards and a good card to run like overall. This card is great and it's underrated too, which really makes like people won't expect this card a lot of time. It's great, it's a good mill card, and it provides pretty decent fighters on top of that. This thing going straight up to top of the B plus tier. It's great. You guys should use it more. It's honestly one of the more like underrated, like extremely underrated card in this game. People see the draw 2 cards and we oh, that's card shit, but it's not. It really isn't. You guys should use it more. Next, we have a pretty sad card. Zecharius. 3 white, 12 green, 900 HP, 900 power. When it starts, can set the power of a target fighter to minus 200 power. Minus power means that it will heal your fighter when it's attacked instead of damaging them. Right, so Zecharius is a bit unnecessary. He's unnecessarily expensive for what he does, and he doesn't if you want a 12 green finisher, just use this motherfucker instead. He even costs 1 less white, and he's almost like just as good. Well, maybe not, but he's really good. That's all. And this guy, on the other hand, Zek is a bit sad, and the fact that it relies on your opponent have a fighter with high enough HP to run this guy usage instead of Bloxy Announcer. And the fact it just costs 1 more white. 9/9 is big, sure, but it's not like extremely unkillable or anything. That's why I don't think Zecharius is like the best card in the world. He is viable, but if you want like a 12 green finisher, just go run Bloxy Announcer instead. Though I would put him here. I will put him above some of these more useless cards. He's not the greatest card in the world. That's just the truth. Next though, we have Batonsman. What makes Batonsman almost all the time better than the script is because they cost the same, sure, but this thing bypasses a lot more immunities, bypasses on-death effects, and that's all. And that's just make it a lot greater than what it is. Like, bypasses on-death. A lot of cards get changed to on-death because their on-cast ability used to be so strong, now they are on-death. They are negated by Alpha Big Batonsman. And it even bypasses some of the more, like, as long as the target isn't target immune, this thing bypasses almost every, bypasses almost every effect, even Telemon's immunities, which makes it extremely a high value card too. And with that being said, I think it's a pretty like solid card, and I would gladly put it above Sharkmaster. It's a good card. It's not overrated. Trust me, it's pretty decent. Next, we have Block Hawk. Why do I feel like I have talked about this guy before? Green card tier list. So, my Mirion. Actually, no. Block Hawk. We do have Block Hawk here. Okay, so we talked about Block Hawk already. Go back to my video to know what I actually said about him. I will put him to near good, so that means viable. Yeah, put him here. Okay, next we have Police Taskmaster. Police Taskmaster is, by all accounts, a extremely situational card. Policeman himself really doesn't need this kind of win. Let's be honest here. Policeman himself is actually already really good, but this guy's always been like a good, like, you know, put in. He's a good option, but now that he requires 4 police cards in your base plate to do what he do usually, he's a lot like he's extremely bad now. Basically, he's sometimes not even worth it. And yes, I do like the case mechanic. The case mechanic is so fun, but then again, this guy's just so bad now. It's just a bit sad. So I think he really do need some help. If he requires only like 2 base plate or 3, 2 base plate, yeah, he would be like make him cost like 2 white and like 2 blue or 1 blue, and then make him require like 2 base plate. He would be pretty amazing there. But until then, he really do needs a buff. He's pretty unneeded now in this situation. Next we got Pit. God damn it! Haven't remembered name this card just yet. Got Hollow Extraction. So it's a 2 white and then 2 of every color cards. Is an action card, and all fighters lose 200 power. Transform all of them into Fundepted Fighters. Fundepted Fighters is this card right here. 3 white, 900 HP, blah 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 blah. Read that when you want, and then it gives you Hollow's Wealth. Hollow's Wealth with Hollow's Extraction. So Hollow's Web is all fighters gain 200 power card is free. You gain 2 color stud and 2 stud of each color. So basically, you play this card for free to transform everything into Funded Fighters, and then all fighters you gain 200 power, and basically like these things negates each other. Basically, transform all fighters into Funded Fighters for free, if you can cast it with its price, of course. Not the best card in the world. Is a bit like unworthy for what it is, and to be honest, isn't like the best thing. It's also a bit slow. Like if you're gonna play a card that costs 2 of each color, we have this guy, which is honestly a lot better. But then again, I wouldn't say it's bad. It's okay. It's right above this. It gets places. Next, a card that's been missing for a really long time, and the last card on my tier list, the Innovative. This card used to be tokenized for a really long time, and now he's back. 2 of each color except white, 700 power, 700 health. During your end step, if there are 4 colors among cards in your graveyard, all ally fighter generate and give yourself Banhammer. Extremely cool ability. Graveyard is card that already been destroyed this game, by the way, because it was one of the rare cards that actually utilized that mechanic. And because all ally fighter generates, that means that he will also generate, which make that Banhammer a lot less white consuming. On top of being a pretty decent stats. Okay, Clockwork is good because of his stats. The Innovative is good because of his ability. Basically, they're the same thing of the coin, and I think the Innovative is just honestly, it's an extremely cool card now, and it would be a crime for me to not put him anywhere that isn't A tier. S tier, he's not really deserved that place yet. We haven't seen the meta really revolves around how OP this can be, but yeah, I would gladly put him in above the Shardmaster. And there you go. The almost 100% complete tier list of almost all epic cards in Blox Card. Yes, there's some that are missing, some that's from like archetypes that hasn't been released yet, but they still have their codes in game, and there's still cards that have the stuff and that. There's still the splitting card, which I haven't got to mention about them yet, but that's all that is like known, like most known about for now. It's been a journey, very fun. I think that I've done my job with this series. So I think we'll start making Dex videos now, because this is just really tiring to do. So now I would save it. It will go at most of BC's epic cards tier list. Gonna download the image into my pictures. Okay, and I'm gonna save this. Alright, and then yep, perfect. Thank you so much for everyone that's watching. 51 subscribers is such a fun thing to have. Goodbye.